A retired police officer walked into a small-town auction just to pass the time. But when he saw a battered German shepherd lying motionless on the cold floor, something inside him broke. The crowd called the dog worthless. Too dangerous, too far gone. Yet, when the officer looked into its eyes, he saw the same pain that haunted his own. He raised his hand and said, "I'll take him." Neither of them knew it. That moment would uncover a buried secret from the force. A secret powerful enough to redeem them both and change an entire town forever. What happened next will make you cry and believe in second chances again. Before we start, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. Let's see how far this story travels. The wind rolled down from the Rockies that afternoon, carrying the cold breath of early winter into the mountain town of Silver Pines, Colorado. Snow from the morning still clung to the edges of rooftops, and the air smelled faintly of pine resin and old smoke. Inside the county auction hall, light flickered from dim fluorescent tubes, buzzing like tired insects. Rows of wooden chairs faced a raised platform where the remnants of another world. Broken kennels, rusted chains, and tattered police gear were being sold off one by one. Jack Dalton sat in the back row, the brim of his worn cap shadowing a face that looked carved from stone. At 46, Jack was built solid, broad shoulders, weathered hands, and eyes that had once been bright, but now carried the dull ache of someone who'd seen too much. His dark brown hair was streaked with early gray, his jaw rough with 2 days' stubble. A former police officer, Jack had retired 5 years earlier after a botched drug bust left his partner dead and his faith in the badge shattered. Since then, he'd lived alone in a timber cabin above the town, tending to his late father's property and avoiding conversations longer than a few sentences. The locals respected him but kept their distance. There was something about Jack's silence that felt heavy, as if it carried echoes of gunfire. The auctioneer's voice cracked through the hall. Lot 27, a 6-year-old German shepherd, male, former K-9 unit, no longer fit for duty. The cage was wheeled forward. Inside lay a dog that barely looked alive. His fur, once a proud black and tan, was matted with dirt and scars. His eyes, a deep amber, were half closed as if the light itself hurt. When he breathed, it came in short, uneven pulls. "Echo," someone whispered near the front. That's what they used to call him. A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. Jack's gaze fixed on the animal. Something in that stillness, a kind of defeated grace, pulled him out of his chair. The auctioneer cleared his throat. Starting bid, $50. Laughter bubbled up from a group of men in the second row. "50? You'd have to pay me double to take that thing home," one said. "Look at him. Damaged goods," another added, shaking his head. Echo didn't react, not a twitch, not even a glance. He seemed beyond the reach of sound. Jack shifted, his gloved hands gripping the back of the chair in front of him. He'd seen that look before, in the eyes of soldiers who came home but never really made it back. It was the same look that haunted him in the mirror. A young woman stepped out from the shadows at the edge of the hall. She couldn't have been more than 26, slender, with a freckled face framed by waves of honey-blonde hair. Her coat bore the logo of Silver Pines Animal Rescue. "Please," she said, her voice steady but strained. "If no one adopts him today, he'll be euthanized tomorrow. Morning?" The crowd shifted uncomfortably. "Miss Porter?" the auctioneer said with forced patience. "We've been over this. These animals were decommissioned from police service. We have to follow protocol." Lily Porter bit her lip. She had been working at the rescue shelter since college, her heart too big for the small town she called home. Orphaned young and raised by her aunt, She'd grown up around animals. They were the only family she truly trusted. Every failed adoption felt like losing a friend. Jack studied her for a moment, then looked back at the German Shepherd. Echo's flank rose and fell shallowly. A thin chain rattled against the steel crate with each breath. The auctioneer tried again. $40? Anyone? Silence. 30? A man near the door muttered, "That dog's seen things. You can't fix that." Jack's chair scraped against the concrete as he stood. His voice came low but firm. "I'll take him." The laughter stopped. Heads turned. Lily's eyes widened slightly, half hope, half disbelief. The auctioneer blinked. "You sure, sir? He's unpredictable. Paperwork says he attacked a handler last month." Jack's gaze didn't waver. "I'm sure." The auctioneer shrugged. "Sold for $100. The gavel fell with a hollow crack. From the back of the hall, a man in a black leather jacket shifted his weight. His hair was short, his eyes hidden behind dark glasses despite the dim light. He murmured something into his phone and slipped out through the side door. No one noticed except Echo. The dog's ears twitched, and a low growl rumbled in his throat. Lily hurried over with the paperwork, her hands trembling slightly. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I didn't think anyone would—" "Don't thank me yet," Jack replied, signing his name with a quick scrawl. "I don't even know if he'll come willingly." She hesitated. "He doesn't trust men in uniform. The last officer who tried to handle him—" Jack's pen froze mid-air. He looked up slowly. "What happened?" She lowered her gaze. "Let's just say he didn't get another chance." When the paperwork was done, the auctioneer handed Jack a frayed leather leash. "He's all yours, but I'd keep your distance." Jack approached the cage. His boots echoed softly against the concrete. Echo lifted his head, eyes narrowing. The scars across his muzzle caught the light like pale lightning. "Hey there," Jack said, voice calm and steady. "I'm not going to hurt you." He crouched about 6 feet away, careful not to reach out. For a long moment, they stared at each other. The man and the dog, both trying to measure the other's ghosts. Echo's ears twitched, then flattened. His body tensed. The air between them thickened like static before a storm. "Easy," Jack murmured. He reached into his jacket pocket for a small piece of jerky, his habit from years, on patrol. As he pulled it out, the edge of his old police badge caught the light. The reaction was instant. Echo lunged, teeth bared, a growl tearing through the hall. The chain jerked taut as Jack stumbled backward, the badge clattering onto the floor. "Jesus!" the auctioneer shouted. "Get him under control!" But Jack didn't draw back. He steadied himself, meeting the dog's wild eyes. "It's okay," he said quietly. "You're safe now." Echo froze. The growl tapered off into a whimper. He backed into the corner of the cage, trembling. Lily knelt beside Jack. "That badge, it must remind him of something. They used electric collars in training, flash of metal like that. He probably thinks he's about to be shocked." Jack exhaled slowly, tucking the badge deep into his pocket. "No more shocks," he said under his breath. "Not from me." They spent nearly an hour coaxing Echo out. Jack didn't pull or shout. He simply sat on the floor, speaking softly, describing the mountains outside, the quiet of his cabin, the smell of pine after the rain. Finally, as the sun began to drop beyond the frosted windows, Echo stepped forward. His movements were cautious, stiff. When he reached the threshold of the cage, he stopped, glanced at Jack, and let out a small, uncertain huff. "That's it," Jack whispered. One step at a time. He slipped the leash around Echo's neck, careful not to tighten it. The dog's eyes flicked toward the door, then back at the man. "Let's go home," Jack said. Lily watched them leave, her heart twisting between relief and fear. The last light of day spilled across the parking lot, painting their shadows long against the snow. The man walked slowly, shoulders squared, the dog limping slightly beside him. Behind the window of the auction hall, the man in the black jacket reappeared, watching them disappear into the cold. His lips curved into a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. Then he turned and melted back into the dusk. Outside, the first flakes of evening snow began to fall, soft, silent, like a promise that something long buried was about to rise again. The wind was sharper up in the hills. By the time Jack Dalton's pickup reached his cabin, the snow had thickened into a pale curtain, erasing the road behind him. His small wooden house stood among pines that bent beneath white weight, smoke curling from the chimney into the twilight. Inside, the air was dim and still. A wood stove ticked softly, its orange glow reflected in the worn brass of old police commendations that Jack had never taken down. He parked the truck near the porch, turned off the engine, and sat for a moment staring at the dog in the passenger seat. Echo sat stiffly, eyes darting at every sound, the creak of branches, the whine of the wind through cracks in the door. His tail didn't move. When Jack opened the door, the German Shepherd didn't jump out. He just watched, muscles tense, as though the world outside might collapse if he stepped into it. "Suit yourself," Jack muttered, walking to the porch. But when he opened the front door and a wave of warmth spilled out, Echo followed. Slowly, cautiously, paws silent on the wood floor. Inside, Jack had already prepared a space in the corner. A thick blanket, a bowl of water, and leftover chicken stew. He didn't expect gratitude. He just nodded to the dog and said, "It's not much, but it's better than that damn cage." Echo sniffed the bowl, but didn't eat. His amber eyes followed every movement Jack made. When Jack turned on the old radio sitting by the window, a burst of static filled the room. Then a faint crackle. A dispatcher's voice from an old police frequency Jack sometimes kept on out of habit. The reaction was instant. Echo flinched, tail tucked, ears pinned back. He darted behind the couch, trembling. Jack froze, then turned the dial off. The silence that followed was thick and brittle. "All right," he said quietly, "no radio." That night, as snow whispered against the window, Jack sat in his armchair and spoke softly across the room. "I used to have a partner. His name was Cole. He'd been with me for 8 years. Smart, stubborn, never listened to orders." His voice trembled with the faint trace of a smile. "Kinda like you, I guess." Echo didn't move, but one ear twitched. Jack poured himself a shot of whiskey, stared into the glass, and said, "The last thing he said to me was, 'We'll make it out, Jack.'" He looked down, his fingers tightening. He didn't. The only sound was the slow crackle of the fire. By morning, Lily Porter's small blue hatchback appeared on the road. She stepped out, bundled in her wool coat, cheeks pink from the cold. When she saw Echo through the window, she smiled with relief. "How's he doing?" she asked as Jack opened the door. "Still breathing," Jack said. "Won't eat, won't sleep." She crouched, careful to keep her movements gentle. Echo's head lowered, nostrils flaring. Lily noticed faint circular scars around his neck, pale lines where fur refused to grow back. Her voice softened. "Those marks, they're from shock collars. Someone used voltage training on him, probably in service." Jack's expression hardened. "I've seen those methods. Should have been banned years ago." "He'll need time," Lily said, glancing at him. "Maybe you both do." That afternoon, Jack tried again. He cooked chicken, mixed it with rice, and placed the bowl near the couch where Echo hid. He sat on the floor a few feet away, pretending to read an old newspaper aloud. His voice was low and steady. After several minutes, he heard the quiet scrape of paws. Echo approached, sniffed the food, then looked at Jack as if asking permission. Jack didn't move. The dog finally ate. It was the first small truce between them. Days passed. The snow deepened, swallowing the road to town. Jack's routine settled into quiet rhythm, chopping wood, fixing leaks, talking to a dog who rarely responded. Yet he noticed small changes. Echo now slept near the fire instead of under the table. And sometimes when Jack woke in the night, he could hear the slow, even breathing of the animal nearby. But peace was fragile. One evening, a storm rolled down from the mountains. Thunder cracked above the cabin like distant gunfire. Echo jolted awake, tail clamped, eyes wide with terror. He ran to the door, clawing at it, barking uncontrollably. Jack grabbed his coat and followed him outside. The snow came down in thick sheets, wind shrieking through the trees. "Echo!" he shouted, but the dog was already bounding toward the slope behind the cabin. Jack stumbled after him, boots sinking deep. Through the chaos, he saw the dog stop suddenly, barking toward the ridge. Then Jack heard it too, the low rumble, not thunder this time, but the sound of shifting snow. Avalanche. "Back!" Jack yelled, but before he could move, a wall of snow slid from the upper slope. He dove behind a fallen pine, bracing himself as a wave of white roared past. When the noise faded, the world was still again. Smothered, silent. Echo stood near him, chest heaving, snow clinging to his fur. Jack stared at the collapsed ridge where the path had been. If the dog hadn't run out, he would have been caught beneath it. He crouched, catching his breath, and murmured, "You just saved my damn life." Echo blinked up at him, panting. Then, for the first time, he stepped forward and pressed his head gently against Jack's knee. The gesture was brief, uncertain, but real. Back inside, Jack wrapped the dog in a blanket near the stove. As he stirred the fire, he noticed how Echo's eyes followed his movements now, not out of fear, but recognition. The walls that separated them had begun to thin. Later that week, Lily returned with supplies, medicine, canned food, and a warm blanket embroidered with the rescue center's logo. She smiled when she saw Echo sleeping peacefully by the hearth. "You two look better," she said, removing her gloves. Jack chuckled softly. "He's better company than most people I know." "You're healing each other," Lily said. Then, after a pause, "But be careful. Dogs like him, they remember everything." Her words lingered long after she left. That night, Jack dreamed of the explosion again. The flash of light, the scream of metal, Cole's voice shouting his name. But when he jolted awake, sweating, he wasn't alone. Echo was there, sitting near the bed, ears perked. The dog let out a quiet whine and laid his head beside Jack's arm. Jack reached out, hand trembling slightly, and touched the dog's scarred neck. "It's all right," he whispered. "You're safe here. So am I." Outside, the snow fell softly, blanketing the world in silence. For the first time in years, Jack didn't feel the weight of the past pressing so hard. The storm had passed, and somewhere between man and dog, something fragile and new had taken root: trust. The morning after the storm dawned clear and pale. A thin veil of mist curled above the pines outside Jack's cabin, sunlight glinting off untouched snow. Echo slept near the wood stove, chest rising and falling in slow rhythm. While Jack sat at the table, sorting through mail he didn't remember asking for, mostly bills, a few notices, and one envelope from the police union that remained sealed. He rubbed the back of his neck, feeling the weight of another sleepless night. By noon, the sound of tires crunching on the frozen dirt road broke the silence, Jack glanced through the frosted window and saw Lily Porter's small blue hatchback pulling up beside his truck. She stepped out carefully, boots sinking into the snow, wrapped in her beige coat and scarf. Her breath puffed white in the cold. In her gloved hand, she carried something small, a leather collar, old and worn. "Morning," she greeted, her tone hesitant. "You might want to see this." Jack let her in. The heat from the stove fogged her glasses briefly as she held out the collar. "I found this in Echo's crate at the rescue center," she said. "Didn't think much of it until I noticed the stitching." She turned the leather inside out, revealing a small metal clasp, cleverly hidden. Inside, a flash drive no bigger than a thumbnail. Jack's brow furrowed. "You're telling me someone hid data in a dog collar?" "Not just someone," she replied, "whoever trained him." He turned the drive over in his calloused fingers, the faint initials RRK9 engraved along its edge. Raven Rock. The name stirred something half-remembered from his days on the force. A facility out west. Private contracts, government ties, whispered rumors of behavioral modification. He'd dismissed it then as just another black-budget experiment. Now, it sat on his kitchen table. They plugged the drive into Jack's old laptop. The screen flickered, lines of encrypted code filling it, before resolving into video files and reports. Footage appeared, rows of German shepherds in steel kennels, handlers in tactical gear shouting commands. Electrodes glinted under harsh fluorescent light. Echo was among them. Identified as Unit 47BE. The document heading read, Behavioral Conditioning Unit, Raven Rock Training Facility, Commanding Officer, Captain Marcus Hale. Lily's voice shook. My God, they tortured them. Jack scrolled through the pages, pain metrics, obedience scores, chemical stimulants. Each entry colder than the last. This wasn't training, he muttered. It was control. The name Marcus Hale stopped him cold. He knew that name. Captain Hale had been a legend once, head of Denver K-9 Division, decorated for overseas contracts after retirement. Jack had met him briefly during a regional conference. A tall, broad-shouldered man with piercing blue eyes and a smile that never reached them. The kind of man who saw loyalty as a lever, not a bond. We need to know if he's still active, Jack said, closing the laptop. And I know someone who can find out. That afternoon, they drove to Denver. The journey was long, winding roads through pine valleys and barren hills. But Echo rode calmly in the truck bed, eyes scanning the horizon. Every so often, he'd let out a low rumble at passing vehicles, as though remembering something buried deep in muscle memory. They arrived at a nondescript office building with a discreet sign, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Denver Field Office. Jack's old friend, Tom Reyes, met them in the lobby. Tom was in his early 50s, Latino, with graying hair cropped short and lines etched deeply around his eyes. Once a detective, now a federal liaison, he had the quiet, measured air of a man who'd seen too much but spoke only what mattered. "Dalton," Tom said, shaking his hand firmly. "Didn't expect to see you outside the mountains." "Wasn't planning to," Jack replied, but something came up. Inside Tom's office, the walls were lined with case maps and framed commendations. Jack slid the USB across the desk. "Ever heard of Raven Rock?" Tom plugged it in, scanned the files, and let out a slow exhale. "Jesus, Jack, where did you get this?" "From a dog," Jack said flatly. Tom frowned. Then the rumors were true. Hale didn't retire, he privatized. Runs a security firm now, Hale Tactical Solutions. Contracts with foreign governments, paramilitary groups, and private contractors. Exports trained K-9 units all over the world. Lily leaned forward. So he's still using this conditioning? Officially, no, Tom replied. Unofficially. He hesitated, lowering his voice. The Bureau's been watching him, but nothing sticks. Every time a whistleblower talks, they vanish or recant. Jack's jaw tightened. He used Echo, and God knows how many others. Tom nodded grimly. You're poking a hornet's nest. If Hale knows you've got that data, he won't just walk away. When they returned to the cabin that night, a strange tension hung in the air. Echo paced near the window, ears pricked, alert to every faint sound outside. The wind had died, but something else filled the silence. A low hum of unease. Lily sat on the couch, clutching a mug of coffee, while Jack replayed fragments of the footage. See this? He said, pausing on a frame of Echo standing rigid, facing a man off camera. They trained him with specific auditory triggers, commands buried under noise. As if on cue, Echo lifted his head, ears twitching toward the laptop speaker. Then, slowly, he walked to the door and sat facing it, muscles tense. Jack exchanged a look with Lily. He's remembering, she whispered. That night, Jack dreamt of sirens and shrapnel. The explosion came again. The same flash, the same scream. Cole's voice shouting orders through the smoke. When Jack woke with a start, drenched in sweat, he heard something moving. Echo was on his feet, body rigid, eyes scanning the dark corners of the cabin. He growled low, then barked sharply toward the window. Jack grabbed his flashlight, sweeping it across the glass. The snow outside reflected only his own reflection, until a shadow shifted by the tree line. A figure dressed in black darted between pines, almost silent in the snow. Stay, Jack ordered quietly, but Echo was already moving, swift, precise. The dog lunged through the open door into the night, a streak of motion cutting through white mist. Jack followed, boots crunching over ice. He found the intruder halfway to the truck, fumbling with something metallic, a crowbar, maybe. Echo's growl froze the man mid-step. The dog stood between Jack and the stranger, fur bristling, teeth bared. The man hesitated only a moment before bolting toward the woods. Echo lunged, but stopped short at Jack's whistle, the kind of instinctive obedience born not from fear, but choice. Jack knelt, gripping the dog's collar, breath clouding in the cold. Good boy, he said softly. You did good. Back inside, Lily's hands trembled as she held the curtain aside. Who was that? Jack locked the door, checking the window latches. Someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. His gaze shifted to the USB still lying on the table. And I think they'll be back. Echo settled by the fire again, still alert, eyes fixed on the door as if guarding not just a man, but a secret buried deep within his own past. For the first time, Jack realized that Echo wasn't just surviving anymore. He was protecting. And whatever ghost had sent that man to their doorstep, it had just declared war. By late afternoon, the world outside the cabin had turned into a white void. The snow came down in thick, twisting sheets, swallowing the pines, the mountains, and the road that led out of Silver Pines. The power had gone out hours ago. Jack Dalton sat by the window with a lantern glowing faintly beside him, watching the storm rage against the glass. Lily was in the kitchen, bundling extra blankets, her breath misting in the cold air. Echo lay near the door, head on his paws, ears twitching at every low groan of the wind. Radio's dead, Jack muttered, setting the old transceiver down. No signal. Roads are closed all the way to Summit Creek. Lily stepped closer, her face pale in the lamplight. How long can we last without heat? Jack gave a half smile. Long enough if we stick close to the stove and don't waste the wood." He rose, stoking the fire, the flames catching again with a hiss. Outside, the sound of the storm was like the ocean, endless and heavy. Echo suddenly lifted his head, growling low, his gaze fixed toward the door. Jack turned sharply. "What is it, boy?" The dog stood up, muscles tense, ears pointed toward the howling dark. For a moment, Jack thought he was reacting to the wind, until a faint sound cut through it. A cry. A weak, muffled sound, like a child's voice beneath the snow. Lily froze. "Did you hear that?" Jack was already reaching for his coat, grabbed a shovel and a blanket. They pushed into the storm, the wind slicing through layers of wool and leather like knives. Echo bounded ahead, his powerful form barely visible through the flurries. His bark echoed once, sharp, certain, and then came the frantic scratching of paws against snow. Jack followed, stumbling through knee-deep drifts, until his flashlight beam caught a small shape half buried near a fallen pine. A boy, no older than 10, his skin pale blue, his jacket torn, snow crusted in his hair. Jack dropped to his knees, brushing ice away from the child's face. Hey, kid, you're okay. You're safe now." The boy stirred faintly, his lips forming one broken word. "Mom! Lily!" Jack shouted over the wind. "Get the blanket, now!" They wrapped the boy tight, Lily holding him close while Jack lifted him into his arms. The child weighed almost nothing. Echo ran beside them, circling protectively as they fought their way back through the storm. By the time they reached the cabin, Jack's arms were numb and his breath ragged. He laid the boy near the fire, rubbing his hands to restore color. Lily checked his pulse, her medical training from the rescue center showing through. "He's hypothermic but alive. We need to warm him slow." Echo moved in close, curling around the boy, his thick fur pressing against the child's body for warmth. The boy's small hand twitched, grasping a handful of Echo's fur as if by instinct. Jack knelt beside them, his eyes softening. For a long moment, silence reigned except for the fire's crackle and the distant roar of the storm. Something about the sight, the boy shivering against the dog's chest, pulled Jack backward in time. He remembered another night, years ago, in a rain-slick alley overseas. His partner, Cole, bleeding out under a shattered streetlight, and Jack's own trembling hands trying to stop the blood with his jacket. "Stay with me," he'd whispered then. "You're not alone." Now, in the cabin, he murmured the same words. "You're not alone, kid." Hours passed. The storm showed no mercy. The lantern dimmed to a soft glow, and the temperature dropped until their breath fogged like smoke. Lily fell asleep in the chair, head against the wall, while Jack sat guard near the window. Echo didn't move from the boy's side. His eyes, alert and amber bright, scanned the room whenever the wind rattled the walls. At dawn, the storm began to ease. Gray light crept through the cracks of the boarded windows. The world outside lay buried under white silence. Jack stretched stiffly, poured a bit of melted snow into a cup, and walked toward the boy. The child blinked awake, his voice hoarse. "Where's my mom?" Jack crouched beside him. "We don't know yet, son. What's your name?" "Eddie," the boy whispered. "Eddie," Jack repeated gently. "You're safe here. We'll find your mother, I promise." Lily stirred and came over, kneeling beside them. "Do you remember where you last saw her?" Eddie nodded weakly. She works with the rescue team. We got separated when the snow came. She told me to wait near the old road sign. I tried to go back. His voice broke. Lily placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You did the right thing, Eddie. You held on." Jack noticed something then, a small metal band hanging from a cord around the boy's neck. It wasn't jewelry, more like a piece of hardware. "What's that?" he asked softly. Eddie looked down. "It was on my jacket when Mom gave it to me. Said it helps people find each other if they get lost." Jack lifted the object, a cracked, frost-covered locator chip. The design was familiar, too familiar. He'd seen one just like it years ago in a Raven Rock field manual. Lily caught his look. "That's the same model they used for K-9 units, isn't it?" Jack nodded grimly. "Exactly. It's a GPS tracker, old military grade. Hale's company must have repurposed it for their exports. If they're tagging rescue volunteers—" He didn't finish the thought. Lily's eyes widened. "Then they could be tracking dogs, people, anyone." Echo suddenly lifted his head, ears sharp, as if responding to the tension in their voices. Jack scratched behind his ear absently, mind already racing. "This isn't just about Echo anymore," he said. "They're watching everything that came out of Raven Rock, including the ones they lost." Outside, the wind howled again, scattering snow from the trees. Jack stood, looking toward the frozen horizon. "We end this," he said quietly. "No more running, no more hiding." Lily looked up at him, her voice low but firm. "Then we'll need proof and allies." Jack nodded, eyes steady. "We'll find both." Echo came to stand beside him, the boy still sleeping soundly behind. The dog's gaze followed Jack's toward the white expanse beyond the glass. His tail flicked once, as if in silent agreement. The storm had buried Silver Pines, but inside that small cabin, something had changed. Fear had turned into purpose. Grief had hardened into resolve. And for the first time, Jack felt that maybe, just maybe, the darkness he'd lived in for years had met its match. He reached down and rested his hand on Echo's head. "We're going to finish this," he whispered. "For all of them." The fire crackled softly, and beyond the snow, a pale beam of sunlight broke through the storm clouds, thin but unyielding, like hope refusing to die. The sky above Denver was a cold, glassy blue when the morning of the exhibition arrived. The city looked pristine, almost too clean for what was about to unfold beneath its polished lights. Inside the sprawling convention center, banners fluttered from the rafters. Raven Rock Advanced Training, Precision, Obedience, Evolution. Crowds of investors, officers, and journalists filled the hall, their chatter rising like a hum of expectation. At the far end, Marcus Hale stood behind the stage curtain, inspecting his reflection in a black glass panel. He was a man in his 50s, tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair and eyes the color of steel. Years of command had carved arrogance into his every gesture. His tie was immaculate, his cufflinks engraved with the Raven Rock insignia, a falcon gripping a lightning bolt. "This is history," he murmured to his assistant, a nervous young man clutching a clipboard. "No more doubts. Today they'll see what perfect obedience looks like." Outside the hall, a black SUV pulled up quietly. Jack Dalton stepped out, his weathered face half hidden beneath a gray cap. The air carried that faint metallic chill before snow, the kind that felt like the breath of mountains. Behind him, Lily Porter adjusted the strap of a camera disguised as a badge, her honey-blonde hair tied back neatly. In the back seat, Tom Reyes from the Denver FBI field office scanned his tablet. "All feeds ready," Tom said. "As soon as the presentation starts, we stream live to the internal servers and local media." Jack nodded, his tone low. "Echo's ready, too." The German Shepherd, 6 years old with black and tan fur gleaming under the morning sun, sat quietly beside him. His golden eyes reflected both calm and something older, memory. He had been here before, not in this hall, but in the presence of the man whose voice once commanded pain. They moved in with the flow of the guests. Jack carried a press ID. Lily stayed close, her nerves masked by determination. Tom disappeared backstage with 2 federal agents, their communication discreet, almost invisible. The lights dimmed. Hale walked on stage to thunderous applause. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, spreading his arms, "today, Raven Rock rises again." He gestured to a row of sleek, trained dogs lined behind glass partitions. "These are not mere service animals. These are instruments of precision, engineered through discipline and science." Echo stiffened. Jack felt it through the leash. His ears pricked forward, hackles slightly raised. Hale's voice, deep, calculated, was unmistakable, the very cadence of cruelty. Lily whispered, "Jack, he's reacting." "I know," Jack murmured. "Let him remember. Let him decide." As Hale continued his speech, Jack led Echo forward into view. Murmurs rippled through the audience. A stray handler, a misplaced demonstration. Hale's expression flickered for a second. Recognition. "That dog," he said slowly. "He's one of ours, isn't he?" Jack's voice rang clear across the hall. "He was, before you broke him." The crowd stirred. Cameras turned. Hale tried to recover. "This man has no authorization to—" But Echo stepped forward, his stance tall, commanding. The room fell silent. Hale's voice faltered mid-word. The dog's gaze locked on him, unwavering, knowing. Then, with a single breath, Echo barked. Once. Deep. Resonant. That sound cut through the room like a thunderclap. Suddenly, the massive LED screen behind Hale flickered. One by one, files opened. Training logs, hidden video footage, audio recordings. The USB data, smuggled out from Echo's collar weeks ago, came alive. The audience gasped. Images showed rows of kennels, electric restraints and trainers shouting commands. Then came the audio, Hale's own voice. "Increase the current. He doesn't obey until he breaks." For a moment, Hale stood frozen, pale as ash. Then came the shouts. "FBI, step away from the stage." Tom Reyes and his team advanced from both sides. Hale tried to run, but agents pinned him before he reached the stairs. Journalists surged forward, their flashes lighting the chaos like lightning in a storm. Jack knelt beside Echo, who stood still, eyes calm. "It's over," Jack whispered. That evening, headlines swept across every news outlet. Raven Rock exposed, federal arrest in animal abuse scandal. And beneath it, a photo, a German shepherd standing tall beside a man in a worn jacket, both framed by the light of justice. Days later, Silver Pines saw a different kind of crowd. Not reporters, but locals, volunteers, animal lovers, veterans. A new sign was raised near the base of the mountain. Echo Haven Rehabilitation Center. The old barn had been rebuilt into a sanctuary for abused and retired K9 dogs. Lily managed the daily operations with quiet grace, her kindness grounding the place. Jack oversaw training, his gentle authority restoring trust to those who had forgotten what safety felt like. Tom visited often, helping with paperwork and occasionally dropping off donations from the bureau. On the first day of spring, the center opened its doors to the public. The snow had begun to melt, revealing soft green under the pines. Echo sat by the entrance, calm and regal, wearing a simple leather collar with a small silver badge. Jack's old police insignia. As people arrived, a familiar voice called out. Eddie, the boy they had rescued in the storm, ran up the path holding a wooden plaque he'd carved himself. "Mr. Jack, Miss Lily, look." He held it high. The words, carved unevenly but full of heart, read, "Heroes come in all forms." Lily knelt down, tears glimmering in her eyes. "It's perfect," she said softly. You're part of this story, too. Eddie grinned. Mom said Echo's like an angel. She says, sometimes God sends help in fur. Jack smiled, his voice steady but warm. I think she's right. Later that evening, when the guests had gone and the valley turned quiet, Jack sat on the porch with Echo beside him. The mountains stood tall in the fading light, their peaks glowing orange under the sunset. He reached down and stroked Echo's fur, now flecked with gray around the muzzle. You've done enough, partner, he murmured. You found justice for both of us. Echo's tail thumped softly against the wood. The dog's eyes lifted toward the horizon, where dawn and dusk seemed to meet in the same light. Lily joined them, leaning against the doorframe. Beautiful, isn't it? She said. Jack nodded. Yeah, feels like peace. A soft wind rustled through the pines. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rang. One, then two, slow and steady. Jack closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, his heart felt unburdened. Echo rested his head on Jack's knee. Together, they watched the light spread across the mountains, a promise, a prayer, a homecoming. Justice, when guided by love and truth, becomes more than punishment. It becomes healing. Jack and Echo's story reminds us that God's miracles often come quietly, through courage, compassion, and forgiveness. The light of faith can turn pain into purpose and brokenness into grace. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who believes in second chances. Comment Amen to bless everyone who has ever fought for what's right, even when no one believed them. May the Lord bless you, protect your loved ones, and remind you that even after the longest storms, His light will always return. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories of hope and faith. God bless you all.